Hello, loves. Welcome back to In World Peace. I am your host, Maggie Gehlsen-Burnett. Wow, it's been a minute since I have done a solo episode. We are going to keep this one short and sweet today, and the main reasoning for that is twofold. The first is that, I'm not going to lie to you, the thought of doing a solo episode for a while was like nails on a fucking chalkboard for me, and this is because of a multitude of things. Mainly my life got really crazy in the first part of the year, and I ended up quitting my corporate job. So there's that. And I also was having a lot of burnout from just putting out so much content and so many episodes for this show in the first season. So I really wanted to give myself some space to just kind of like chill the fuck out for a minute. And if you didn't know this, that most podcasters, even if they're doing their show, on their own, have scripts that are written out for them or that they write out themselves. So for me, I don't tend to stay to a script. I don't stick to a script like word for word or anything, but I do have to write out outlines and, shit like that. And so it does require some brain power on my end, and I edit all the things, and, I'm a one-man show. So I was just taking a little breather is really what I'm trying to say. And I was taking a breather from working and from doing basically fucking anything for a few weeks. Took some time off, and then I started doing some contracting work about a month ago, and now we're just back in the swing of things. We've got some guests lined up for this season, not as many guests as last season. I realized what my threshold was for the amount of people I wanted in a season, and I passed it last season. Although we did have literally some amazing guests, but we will be taking that number down this season. I also last week relaunched my online boutique. So if you didn't know that about me, fun little fact, I started an online boutique and women's initiative called FckGirl the Label. I started it in June of 2022, and I did that right before my wedding. LOL, really smart idea. And it was amazing. I loved it. I loved the creativity that went into building a brand. And honestly, I kind of just got sidelined or sidetracked with this whole concept of like an online boutique, like sourcing other clothing articles from other manufacturers. And so basically I kind of scrapped the idea, started over, and this idea for FckGirl came to me during COVID. So if you don't know the story behind FckGirl, you can find out more at FckGirlTheLabel.com. And we're also on Instagram, obviously. I will link all of that in the show notes. But I got the idea for FckGirl during COVID. I was bored as fuck, living at my parents' house, and I was just like, I placed this massive fucking order to Nasty Gal, and they sent me this shirt. I ordered this shirt that said, "Fuck what you heard" on it. It was just a white t-shirt that had black lettering, and it just said, "Fuck what you heard." And I ordered it, and I received it in the mail. And I shit you the fuck not, this t-shirt came on a white Gildan brand t-shirt. So this shirt to produce was probably like 2 cents for Nasty Gal. But I remember thinking to myself, like, this is such a gap in the market. Nobody's making these like cheeky, creative, fun, like articles of clothing. And so I wanted to do it. So I bought a fucking Cricut. Now, if you know me, this is where this story gets hilarious, because I'm truly the least craftiest person alive. Like, listen, the furthest like craftiness that I will venture into is like rhinestoning a baton costume. But I find joy in that, okay? Like, I like making things that are pretty. I don't fuck with scrapbooking, quilting, sewing, any or all of the following. I don't fuck around with, okay? It's not my DNA. It's not my thing. And if that's your thing, that's fucking awesome. Good for you. But it's not mine. So I buy this Cricut. I have to watch like 14,000 videos on how to fucking operate this Cricut. I make like one sticker. It took me probably 6 hours, and I was like, yeah, fuck this. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the initial idea for FckGirl is what I just relaunched, which is like these cheeky, pieces of clothing and hats and accessories. And we're also going to be doing some group courses later on and like group coaching and stuff like that. Basically, the whole initiative behind FckGirl is to help women give less fucks. So a few years ago, there was this book that came out, and most people have heard of it. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Ronson. Well, LOL, turns out that Mark Ronson's kind of like a huge douchebag. And that's just what I've heard through the grapevine and through the online worlds, and that he's like kind of a misogynistic prick. Anywhoski, so carrying on. Basically, I was like, you know what? So many of these books that teach people to give less fucks, what's so funny about them is that they're all like unanimously written by men, which like if there is a subset of the population who does not need to learn how to give less fucks, it's white men. Okay. So I was like, I'm going to try and do something different here. So really, again, there was just kind of this gap that I kept seeing where women fucking care so much. We care so much, and we care about everything. And what I will say is that I loved in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, what I loved so much about it the first time that I read it is that it's sort of this concept of like, okay, you get five fucks a day, and those are the big five things you're going to give a shit about. And I loved that idea of like sort of being so mindful about our choices to the point where we're like, can I give a fuck about this? Do I have enough like fucks in my fuck bank to like divvy out the fucks that would be required to, you know, give a fuck about this thing? I loved that so much. And that concept really always just sat with me after I read that book. So while I'm not like the biggest Mark Ronson fan ever, I do think that there was something there, and I'm really just trying to take that and sort of, you know, not recreate it because what he did is not the same, but I'm trying to put something together where women can learn different tools and strategies and coping mechanisms for their day-to-day life that are actually tangible and something that they can use to help them care less. Because I think if there is a plague amongst women, it's that we care too much, and usually about the wrong things, and it's usually about what other people are thinking of us. So anyway, that's the scoop on FckGirl. I'm super happy to have relaunched it. I'm really proud of it. It is my little gem, my little baby. So let's just kind of circle into today's topic, which is this concept of boxes. And that's a really good segue, because another thing with FckGirl is that I want women to feel like when they buy something from FckGirl, or when they, you know, participate in a group coaching program or whatever, I want them to feel like there is never anybody encouraging them to be put into a box, or there's never anybody trying to put them into a box. So that all being said, let's talk about boxes. I think that I've mentioned this before. I know I have. That I was formally diagnosed with ADHD in March of 2022. So this was right before my wedding. So I truly had like little to no interest in trying to find a new medication at the time to manage my ADHD. And my nurse practitioner agreed, so we were on the same page there. So once the wedding bells began to collect dust, I inquired about some new meds. And the journey of unmasking really began for me then. That was November of 22. So you will hear a lot of folks who were diagnosed later in life with ADHD or you know, some type of neurodivergence. You will hear them speak a lot about the unmasking process. And I can really tell that I am still deep in the weeds of this work, but unmasking is basically the idea that we unlearn or quote undo the behaviors that we acquire to adapt to a neurotypical world. So as you know, our world is designed for neurotypical people. It's not designed for neurodivergent people. So my masking mostly related to how I completed projects in school and ways that I went about learning that, you know, actually took me twice as long as my neurotypical peers, therefore twice the effort, things like that. So in college, this ended up transpiring to masking in really difficult or uncomfortable social situations through the use of drugs and alcohol. So that's a super fucking fun one to explore if you're ever interested in that. That's super, super fun. So I have found through my entire life that there's not really a single part of me that is, quote, easy to put into a box. I could have ended that sentence at easy and my parents would have probably very much agreed with that. I found this through dance and baton twirling, when my style was always different from other people's, but people always seemed to want to know how I got it, but of course other people hated it. Like, it was always this thing where like I could never really be put into a box of like, oh, she's good at that thing but not that thing. Like, I was kind of good at everything. I was sort of like a jack of all trades, but my style was just different from other people. I found this also in pageantry when something of a similar vein happened and I was never quite like the pretty package with a bow on it that judges wanted. I was always like a little rough around the edges, LOL, as someone literally once put it. So so I found this, in multiple different areas of my life. I found this when I entered corporate America, and I found that my passions actually weren't within the work I was doing, but in the interactions with people at the job that I had. So like, I'm a fucking professional yapper. So like, my favorite thing ever was to like have meetings with people and like not talk about our work. Okay. So I always ended up picking different projects in the workspace too, and tasks to sort of give my ADHD like the novelty boost it needed. And I excelled in competition because, as fate would have it, that's also another motivator for folks with ADHD. I call myself multi-passionate because that's really the only word I've ever been able to find that works for me or that really sticks. And I used to think that maybe I was just lazy or flaky or shady because I couldn't fucking finish shit. And I also am like a terrible person that like I've really had to like force myself into essentially texting people back because like, and it's not because I'm flaky and it's not because I'm shady. It's because I truly just like, I'll open your text and then fucking forget. So anyway, what I'm saying is that I used to think that I was like lazy and all these different things, and really like I was super hard on myself and really harsh towards myself, when it turns out the projects and the shit I was doing just didn't have the right motivators, which, by the way, for neurodivergent people, these motivators are play, which includes humor and creativity, which explains, the whole me wanting to get into stand-up comedy thing. It includes interest, it includes novelty, it includes competition, or if you're not a competitive person, connection and collaboration, which is why I'm a firm believer too that sometimes ADHD folks aren't great remote workers because we really like that human connection. And the last one is urgency, which is why we put things off until the very last minute. Sort of like how with the FckGirl relaunch, I decided to basically do it in 48 hours flat. So that was super cool. So what does this all culminate to, you ask? Great question. Let's take 47 fucking detours. First, it relates to everything that I have been trying to discover about myself and my work. So we're really going to hone in on work right here. I'm going to give you kind of a personal story about it, and then, we'll just gab about it. So I recently turned down a job that on paper was really solid. By the way, I've never turned down a job in my life. Like, anytime I've been offered a job, I've always fucking taken it. This job was at a local marketing firm based here in Peoria, and it had a decent salary and like okay benefits. I had inquired about maternity leave and their policy. This was like, I had gotten the offer letter, and then I had to negotiate the salary, which was like kind of a first red flag because we had already talked about a salary. So like, that was annoying. And then basically I had just asked about their maternity leave policy because, my husband and I will likely be trying to conceive within the next like year or so. And because they're a small company and our great nation offers no fucking paid leave for families, it was an absolute dog shit maternity policy. And that's like the most polite way I can put it, truly. So basically I had this like epiphany of sorts where I got this offer, and I just was like, fuck, like I could keep going down this route. I could keep finding a corporate job that tried putting me into a box only to disappoint me. And in turn, I disappoint them by leaving and continuing the cycle of new puppy energy when I started at a new job. Or I could finally get the fuck off the hamster wheel. Which, by the way, if you had spoken to me in like early January or February, I'm just like very deeply sorry for any like kinds of conversations we may have had because I was so fucking unhappy at my job. I think when we're growing up, we don't really, listen, I'm like 14, so like, whatever. But I think when we are young, we have no fucking concept of how your work ends up impacting you on like a daily basis, or like just in really any kind of capacity. We have no concept of how your work can eventually interfere with like multiple areas of your life. I know that like my dad would probably attest to this, and my mom for sure, basically everybody I know would attest to this. I'm using my dad as an example because my dad's an entrepreneur and has been for a very long time. And so I know, because I saw when I was a child, in very formative years, I saw my dad really like hustling to make this dream of his work, and my mom, like it was a full team effort for fucking sure. And I remember him like working, this job that he was not passionate about, that he did not like. And that was, he did that until he could go full time in his business. And like, it was a fucking grind, and that shit impacts you. That impacts your family. That impacts your marriage. That impacts your children. It impacts every single fucking facet of your life. And I guess that I just really never understood how hating your work could bleed into so many other areas of your life. So anyway, like I said, I could finally like get the fuck off the hamster wheel, and I could finally work for myself like I had told myself I was going to do literally like 3 to 5 years ago. I could also explore my interests and passions and take the marketing experience I had garnered over the last 5 years and finally put it into play. And so that is what we're doing. I'm so fucking hype about it. I'm working with clients on personal branding right now and social media management, and it's fucking awesome. And by the way, shameless plug, if you know somebody or you yourself want help building your personal brand or talking about social media, let me know how I can help you. I would love to have a conversation. You can find me on Instagram. We can chat more, all the things. But I really just want to drive home the point that like, this is a really fucking terrifying time, but it's also really exciting. It is incredible. It's an incredible privilege. Let's first start there, to be able to decline a job offer. Like that to me is insane. Like I am very lucky. I would not be able to do this without my spouse and without his support. And I think that being able to decline a job, especially in the world that we're in, especially in the job market that we're in, that is an insane privilege. So I want to really motherfucking drive that point home. So I jumped, and I don't fucking know if there's like a net that's going to appear. There's like that quote, that saying or whatever that like all the white women love, that's like, jump and a net will appear. Like, I don't fucking know if that's going to happen. Listen, I pray every day that it will. But, that's the nature of doing the quote unsafe. But the reality is, and I just want to like really talk about this for a moment, because I think this is the biggest takeaway that I've had over the last, month or so, is that nothing is fucking safe. Nothing is safe. So like, everybody can tell you, you should take that job. You should have a backup plan. You should do all of these things. Totally. Like, I'm not saying like don't have, a backup plan before you leave your job. I had a backup plan. I had this contracting work that I was signed on to do for a marketing firm in New York. Like, that was my backup plan. My point is that the marketing firm that I could have accepted this job with in Peoria, they could have they could have been lit on fire the next day, forcing everybody to be laid off. Like that is safety is a fucking illusion. And my time in corporate America taught me that safety is an illusion. And Silicon Valley tech companies, they are the worst of all. They have become masters at disguising that illusion behind office setup stipends for your new walking pad and your headphones, through fancy dinners and trips to the Bay Area and salaries that would blow your fucking brains out. And the catch is that you just got to sell your soul. That's literally it. And for me, that was not fucking it. I have pretty regularly conversations with people who are like, but I don't know what I would do if I left my like corporate job. And I get it. I'm not saying that everybody like needs to go like fucking girl boss it up. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Also, I don't think everybody should. Like, there are people who straight up would not be good at being an entrepreneur. I literally, this is like my 5th fucking business venture. I'm 28 years old. Like, so like, I have had things fail miserably before. And I'm not saying that as like, I have so much wisdom. I'm saying that because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing either. But there is something in me, and, the same thing was in my dad, that really, really values, autonomy over work and autonomy over my time, especially, I think. I think even more so than money or the nature of the work you're doing, I think autonomy over time is my biggest, like, driving force behind why I want to be an entrepreneur and why I want to work for myself. It's hilarious though, because like all I think of is that meme, right? Where it's like, I quit my 9 to 5 so I could work 24/7. And it's like, for me, I will take that 10 times over every day, because of the fact that at least I know that what I'm building matters to me. And I think it matters to a few other people. I will be totally straight up with you. It's incredibly difficult to work for like a Silicon Valley tech giant and, or even like a Silicon Valley startup or whatever the fuck you're working at. It's incredibly difficult to work for one of those companies and come home at the end of the day and say, I made a positive impact on our world. Like, I think unless you're doing something that's like truly fighting climate change or like global world hunger, like whatever the fuck, I truly think that like there's not a lot of people who in that space can come home at the end of the day and be like, I made a positive impact on our world. I don't know. Listen, I'm a fucking cynic about the tech industry. So like, I'm probably not the best person to speak on this. But anyway, so carrying right along. Secondly, I think this entire concept of being put into a box has truly applied to me my entire life. I have constantly, and I mean constantly, felt like people just wanted me to be put into their little boxes of what they deemed as quote right or quote worthy. And I think when you can't fit into the box, you just say fuck the box. Like, why do we need the box anyway? I discovered through all of this fuckery and pageantry in corporate America that there will always be someone, some even well-intentioned, honestly, that will try to put you into a box because it's easier for them to conceptualize. Like, they can understand you better if they try to put you into a little box in their brains and like try to compartmentalize you. That makes their lives easier. And at some point, you literally just have to have boundaries like a motherfucker and honestly balls to tell them no and to tell them that their boxes are not working for you anymore. So let's backtrack to my time in pageantry really quick. So just fucking indulge me. Okay, come on. You're here. You've made it this far. Back in 2018, I was in the thick of prepping for Miss Iowa. I had set my sights on the crown and I had people left and right, including people who should not have been saying this. I had people telling me that I was going to win. I took a trip to California with a close family friend of ours and my local pageant director. We had the best time, and it's still a time that I look back on super fondly. We stayed at this really sketchy Airbnb in Beverly Hills, and I remember this old woman owned it. And my family friend and director had told her what we were there for, which was to find the perfect swimsuit and wardrobe for Miss Iowa and eventually even Miss America. Like, I remember walking around. These two women are just like my pageant director and the other woman I went with. They were so incredible to me and just lovely people. So Kendra and Michael, if you're listening to this, I love you both. They were like going around Beverly Hills and Los Angeles just being like, this girl's going to be the next Miss America. I was just like, this is so fucking dope having my own hype team here. But basically the gist was that everything had to be Miss America caliber. I remember we were in this room of the Airbnb and the woman who owned it, she had like come into, our space for whatever reason. And we were all like chit-chatting and gabbing. And I had my back slightly turned, and I think I even like took a step into the next room, but I could definitely hear the conversation that was happening. And she made this comment about my body, how I was a little too muscular or some bullshit like that. I wasn't thin enough. I didn't have the quote right physique is kind of like how she phrased it, which is absolutely fucking hilarious to me now, considering that I was on like month 9 of tracking my macros, which is insane. I worked out roughly 3 times a day at the time, and that was not including my talent practice, which, hello, I was a baton twirler. That was a workout, and I looked arguably the most fit I have legitimately ever looked. I won swimsuit at Miss Iowa that year, so like, I don't know what you want. But I think about that conversation a lot, and I thought about it in the months leading up to Miss Iowa a lot. At the time, the internal dialogue around this conversation was so different. Back then it was sort of like this internal dialogue of, oh my God, I can't believe that people think this about me. And like, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix what other people think of me? And now the internal dialogue around that conversation is first, fuck you. And secondly, the discourse around that conversation in my brain is sort of like, how did I just let these strangers, all of these strangers, give their opinions on my body and talents and contributions? And what's more, how did I let it have such a big impact on me? How did I do that? And I think that women probably think about that a lot. You know, someone says, well, I don't like your outfit, or I don't like your hair. We wonder what they're thinking of, you know, our outfit and our hair. And we're imagining the worst possible thing that they're thinking. She's ugly, she's fat, she's, you know, whatever, that outfit's gross, etc. We're thinking about those things. And really what's happening in their minds is that they're probably not thinking about us at all. And also, if they've ever made a comment to us, they're probably not thinking about that either. But for women, for some reason, this like, we have this incessant need to like please everybody around us. And truly in whatever way possible. It could be through our outfits, or through our hair, or through our, you know, appearance, generally speaking, through our weight, through, you know, the way that we speak, through our Instagram, our curated Instagram feeds, and our TikToks, and blah, blah, blah. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. That's so much to take on internally. It's so much to take on mentally. And I mean, that shit will catch up with you physically. Make no mistake. Like, body keeps the score, bitch. It is a lot. It's a lot. So I just remember thinking to myself how I would let them take their lived experiences and their bias, and I would let them project it onto me as like I was just like some bystander. And that to me is arguably one of the most difficult things that I've had to work through after being in pageants for so long and letting people, you know, judge me for so long, people whose opinions opinions did not fucking matter. And it's like the boxes that they had in their minds were so small and so fucked up. And I can't believe that their opinions like held that much weight for me then. And like, even now, sometimes I'll still think about, oh, that person made that comment, or that person said that thing. And you're just like I have to really consciously remind myself now that like their box is not my problem. Their box in their mind is not my issue. So turns out that this woman can kind of eat a bag of dicks though, because the Airbnb that we ended up staying in had a gnarly ceiling leak. And so we had to leave and like check out early and got like all of our money back. And we got a room at a hotel by the airport later on during our stay. So that's the end of that story. So anyway, all this to say that, you know, everybody's always going to try and put you into their little box, and it's the nature, right, of being a human being. But I think there is a way to live your life to where it doesn't have to be dictated by those other people's opinions and boxes and thoughts and feelings and all of that, which women so unconsciously do in our day to day. And so anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I'm going to leave you with a little tip on how to give less fucks about what other people think of you. And there's this really amazing TikToker who I love, who I'm blanking on her name right now, but she posted this video a few weeks back and it's gotten like millions of views, and I'm so happy that it has. She says in this video, she says, say the weird thing. We are desperate for people to like say what they're actually thinking and feeling. And so that is my little tidbit for you. I think truly, and this, you know, for me, it started on social media, but it sort of bled over into my life from there. The more comfortable I got posting on social media about what I actually felt about things once my time in pageantry was over, like 2019 was when I really sort of just stepped into that space and was like, I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm not going to like curate this anymore. I'm not going to like, you know, show people only the pretty parts. I'm not going to like curate this for a panel. I'm going to swear on the internet. I don't give a shit. That was in 2019. And since then, what I have found is that through my writing and through, you know, posting about my opinions on social media and my thoughts and feelings on things and about my mental health and all of that, I have found that that has bled over into my actual, you know, conversations I have with people. I'm very, you know, I like to think that I'm very open and honest and pretty like upfront about how I'm feeling and about my thoughts on things. And I'm very like, steadfast in the way that I express my thoughts and feelings and opinions. And I'm not saying that you have to do it on social media at all, because I do. Listen, I am well aware that I post too much of my life on social media. So I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that perhaps you can find a way in, your day-to-day, and it takes practice, right? Like this whole concept of giving less fucks, of caring less. How do we get there? We get there the same way that we got to caring in the first place, which is by practice and by habit. So you have to practice not caring. It's an art form, I think. I truly believe that. And I have not mastered this art form. I'm only telling you as like another person who's struggling to not give a fuck about what other people think. So don't take my word as Bible. But what I have felt has helped me a lot is by practicing this very consciously. And at first I practiced it on social media. I wrote it out. I typed it out. I used my writing to express it. And then eventually that sort of bled over into conversations I had with people and in my relationships. And eventually I got on TikTok and started talking about things. And then eventually I started a podcast. And then eventually, it all just kind of spiraled from practice, just this conscious sort of day-to-day practice of trying not to care and to listen to myself more and them less. So that's what I'm going to leave you with, homegirls. All right, you guys, have an excellent rest of your day, of your week, of your month, of your year. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. Share this with a friend or a family member or whoever, a loved one, if you enjoyed it. And don't forget to leave me a review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're listening. And share this on social media if you would feel so inclined. And yeah, I will catch you on the next one. Bye.